Remember when they retired Mark Messier's jersey at the Garden? Before he even got out to the ice, when he was just walking through the tunnel from the locker room, he was already crying. They showed him on the Jumbotron. He was wiping away tears, and nothing had even happened yet. And I was like, oh, man, this is going to be tough. I mean, did anyone in the crowd that night not cry? How many athletes have ever been so loved by a city as the captain was here in New York? This guy was our blood and guts, who led us out of the wilderness and made us believers again. How do you say goodbye to somebody like that? I'm telling you, Messier night was a beautiful celebration, but it was really, really sad too. Because guys like Mark Messier only come around once in a lifetime.
What's your greatest day?
Stepan Matteau never made an all-star team. He was a journeyman player at best. But in this town, he's a legend because he scored not one, but two of the most important goals in Rangers history. 94 conference finals against Jersey. Matteau wins Game 3 with a goal in double OT, and then he does it again in Game 7, saves our bacon after the Devils tied it up with just 7.7 seconds left in regulation. That overtime, man, was pure torture. 24 minutes of it. And then out of nowhere, Matteau swoops behind the net, whips around the other side, and it's Matteau, Matteau, Matteau. And just go out on the subway someday and yell Matteau, and I guarantee you, people will start yelling it right along with you. Because in New York, the guy's on a one-name basis forever. One name, but repeated many times.
What's your greatest day?
Hey, you, come here. Let me ask you something. Is there anything more agonizing to a sports fan than the last-second field goal with the entire game on the line? You know what I'm talking about, that win-or-lose walk-off moment that you watch through your fingers like you're watching the shower scene in Psycho? Well, take that situation and throw Super Bowl into the equation, and what do you got then? Hint CPR. Can you say coronary? Super Bowl 25, Giants-Bills. There's 8 ticks left on the clock, and Scott Norwood's lining up the kick. That's for everything, the hardware, the jewelry, the rings. And I swear, all across the tri-state area, you could have heard a pin drop. And you know why? Because millions of people were in the first stages of a coronary. So all I want to say is, seriously, thank you, Scott Norwood. Thank you, thank you, thank you, wherever you are. Because if it weren't for you, a lot of us New Yorkers might not even have made it.
What's your greatest day?
True Nets fans remember the beginning. Man, it was far from pretty. Just one winning season in the first 6 years. We were hurting. But then in 1973 came a moment that would dramatically change their fortunes. A deal with the Virginia Squires for a certain Afro-wearing, high-flying savior known as the Doctor. Lifelong Nets fans will tell you, they knew that very day that things were going to be different. But they probably didn't know just how different. Because that same season, the once lonely Nets won the ABA championship. 2 years later, they did it again. And that's why Nets fans will always remember Dr. J as one of our own. Because he gave us something more than the titles and the highlight reels. He gave us our pride.
What's your greatest day?
When Queens and the Bronx went head-to-head in the 2000 World Series, the atmosphere in the city was electrifying. Every street corner, every diner, every talk radio show, all you heard about was Clemens and Piazza, Piazza and Clemens. The Rocket had plunked Mike in the head during the regular season, and there was still a lot of bad blood left over heading into that Subway Series. It didn't take long for it to explode either. Game 2, in fact, when Clemens tried to bean Piazza again, only this time with a piece of a broken bat. Undoubtedly one of the straight-up craziest moments in the history of the game. At that point, you had to wonder if the Fall Classic was about to turn into a gang war. And in some ways, for the Mets, it did. And they got jumped. Yanks won that series 4-1.
What's your greatest day?
Butch Goring, remember him? He's one of those hockey players that you don't hear too much about anymore, but for Islanders fans, he'll always be a legend. Let me paint a picture for you. 1981 Stanley Cup. Well, Butch played the whole series with a gash in his face you could drive a bus through. Game 1 of the finals against Minnesota, he gets cut by his skate. 40 stitches worth. That's right, 4-0. So what's he do? Gets it sewed up and barely misses a shift. Plays the rest of the series like a man possessed, and oh yeah, he skates away with the Conn Smythe Trophy. That's guts right there. And when you got that kind of grit, backing up guys like Bossy and Trottier, and you've just won your second straight Stanley Cup, well, you know what? It's time to start talking dynasty.
What's your greatest day?
Still, to this day, when you start talking about the fight, anybody who knows anything about boxing, and even many who don't, will know exactly what fight you mean. March 8th, 1971, Ali Frazier at the Garden. One of the greatest sporting contests of all time, and one of the most quintessentially New York moments in all of sports history. The Garden that night was like a hustlers convention of the 5 boroughs. Celebrities, models, businessmen, all collected to witness a fight so important that the entire nation had chosen up sides. In the 15th round, Frazier sealed his victory with a mighty left hook that pulverized Ali, a punch so gigantic and so ferocious, it's probably still reverberating in the Garden somewhere.
What's your greatest day?
One thing your average New Yorker understands is that if you want to be heard, sometimes you got to say it loud. Back when the rest of the world saw John McEnroe as a rude, crude, and indefensible dude, New York City recognized him as one of its own, a shot maker and a risk taker who lived life on the edge and called it like he saw it. In this town, Borg versus McEnroe was us against the world, the New York state of mind on trial. After Borg won their epic 1980 final at Wimbledon, they headed stateside to Flushing, where the vibe was in the air like an unspoken battle cry. This ain't no tea party, baby, and we ain't got no queen. With that electricity flowing through his veins, Johnny Mac beat the Swede in 5 to win his first U.S. Open. And the brilliance of Borg was broken at last by a hometown boy in the magic of a New York night.
What's your greatest day?
Remember 1986? Astros pitcher Mike Scott was like the boogeyman for Mets fans. Jason, Freddie, Leatherface, all rolled up into one. The Mets went up 3-2 on Houston in the 86 NLCS. Scott was on deck to pitch Game 7. The same Mike Scott who had 2 complete game wins in the series. The whole city was thinking, please, God, please let us win Game 6. Luckily, that thought had occurred to the Mets as well. And though it took them 16 agonizing innings to get it done, the fact was the Mets would have played 60 innings that night to avoid another meeting with the talented Mr. Scott. Every time I see scenes from the 86 World Series, I see Mike Scott's ghost hovering in the background, waiting, always waiting, waiting for a game that never comes.
What's your greatest day?
Check this out. When the Women's World Cup opened play at Giant Stadium in 1999, some people thought that the turnout might be low. Close to 80,000 fans. That's right, 80,000 fans showed up for the Cup's first matches to witness one of those rare events that seems to crystallize a movement where history leaps forward on a single afternoon. With a 3-0 shutout of Denmark, the hard-nosed American squad began a journey that ended 3 weeks later with Brandi Chastain whipping off her shirt after the now famous penalty kick that won the World Cup. It's one of the most memorable sports images of all time, and yet here in the tri-state area, we'll never forget how it all started. A magical day at Giant Stadium where the players were all ladies and the football was soccer.
What's your greatest day?